For weeks, whispers of internal discord had haunted the royal corridors, but no one imagined that it would erupt so publicly and so brutally. As the royal family gathers around a resurgent Princess Anne, Queen Camilla finds herself surrounded by silence, abandoned not just by protocol, but by blood. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began with what appeared to be a routine ceremonial engagement at Windsor, a commemorative event steeped in pageantry and tradition. But this time, the air was thick with something far heavier than historical weight. Princess Anne, composed yet intense, stepped forward with a poise that seemed rehearsed not in hours, but over a lifetime of quiet observation. What followed was not just a speech, it was a declaration that broke ranks with everything royal protocol demanded. As she addressed the gathering, her words weren't coated in formality. They cut, clear, and unmistakable. She invoked the weight of heritage, the responsibility of upholding legacy over influence, and the need to protect the integrity of the crown from modern interference cloaked in royal robes. It was Anne's moment, and everyone knew who she meant, even if her name was never spoken. Camilla stood just a few feet away, her posture stiffening with each syllable. Cameras captured every flicker of expression, but the most damning footage came not from her reaction but from everyone else's. Prince William's eyes didn't waver as he nodded ever so slightly in agreement. Catherine's hands, often reserved and composed, clapped first. Even King Charles, the one whose favour Camilla had once relied upon to ascend to her controversial queenship, remained expressionless, an unreadable portrait of conflicted allegiance. The optics were undeniable. Camilla had been politically and emotionally outmaneuvered. In the hours that followed, news outlets exploded with commentary. Royal divide, they called it. Princess Anne's moral coup. Headlines screamed what the palace wouldn't dare whisper. But behind closed doors, the silence was even more deafening. No joint statement was issued. No attempt at unity. No damage control. It was as if the firm had already made its choice and left Camilla to interpret the meaning on her own. Perhaps most damning of all was her quiet exit. Camilla, who just hours earlier had stood as queen consort amidst global scrutiny and fragile public acceptance, left Windsor alone. No staff escort. No Charles at her side. Her car pulled away from the palace gates without ceremony, without witness. In the eyes of many, this was the image of a queen abandoned, not dethroned by decree, but by something more devastating, cold, calculated distance from within. But this moment wasn't born overnight. It was the climax of secrets, frustrations, and unspoken power struggles simmering beneath the crown. In full uniform, her voice unwavering, Princess Anne addressed the nation not as the monarch's sister, but as the moral compass of the House of Windsor. What she said next would redraw royal loyalties in real time and leave Camilla politically stranded. Anne had always been known as the steady one, the backbone of royal duty, unwavering, consistent, and loyal to the monarchy's core values. But no one expected her to take center stage and challenge the existing power dynamics so publicly. On that day, her speech didn't merely echo royal tradition, it shattered the illusion that all was well behind palace doors. With commanding resolve, she spoke of upholding legacy over influence, a line that may have sounded innocuous to the general public, but within the royal inner circle, it was nothing short of a direct challenge. Camilla, standing within earshot, heard more than words. She heard a public indictment, and so did everyone else. When Anne mentioned decisions made without consultation, it was a lightning strike. The reference was unmistakable. She was calling out the growing influence Camilla had exerted behind the scenes without consensus, without deference, and increasingly, without restraint. What followed was more telling than the speech itself. William was the first to clap, not a casual, polite gesture, but a deliberate show of alignment. Catherine followed, her expression firm and approving. The cameras caught it all. But what they missed, the public inferred. The future king and queen were no longer in the queen consort's corner. And Charles? He didn't move. His silence was thunderous. That one moment captured the fracturing of the firm in a way no document or statement ever could. Within hours, Anne's address ignited a storm across social media and international press. Anne the Anchor trended globally. Op-eds hailed her as the protector of the monarchy's soul, the last untainted voice of the old guard. And for every praise she received, Camilla endured the silent punishment of being edged out, excluded not by decree, but by deliberate absence. Behind the scenes, palace insiders hinted that Anne's assertiveness hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been building. Rumours swirled about a series of contentious meetings between the Queen and Anne, many of which had reportedly ended with slammed doors and stiff silences. Something had triggered Anne to go public, and it wasn't ambition. It was a breaking point. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, and Prince Edward began to appear more frequently by Anne's side. Subtle, calculated moves, but in royal strategy, nothing is ever coincidental. Their presence signalled something bigger, a quiet alliance forming around Anne. The Queen's once rising influence was now under siege by the very institution she had fought to be accepted by. She had underestimated the resolve of a princess who never sought a crown, but now held the court's attention with unshakable clarity. But what power move by Camilla had pushed Anne this far? The answer lies in a deeply personal betrayal buried months earlier. While the public saw unity, behind the palace gates a battle raged over a single boy, Prince George, and at its heart was a disagreement that pitted tradition against ambition, with Camilla and Anne locked in a bitter ideological war. It was supposed to be a private discussion, a matter of educational preference for a young prince still years from the throne. But inside the palace, this debate was never just about academics. Camilla, ever the strategist, had allegedly begun lobbying for George's admission into a prestigious foreign institution, an elite school outside the United Kingdom known for cultivating global leaders, not monarchs. On the surface, it seemed like a forward-thinking choice. But to Anne, it was nothing short of sacrilege. The future King of England, moulded by foreign customs? It was unthinkable. And Anne, shaped by a lifetime of duty and unshaken loyalty to the Crown's British core, refused to let it happen without a fight. Tensions escalated behind closed doors. Insiders revealed that the Queen and the Princess had exchanged more than words. There were full-fledged confrontations. In one particularly explosive meeting, Anne reportedly walked out, slamming the door behind her after declaring she would not watch the monarchy be turned into a corporate brand. Her fury wasn't just about education, it was about identity. The choice of school, in her eyes, was a metaphor for everything else Camilla had been changing subtly, steadily, without consent. And in the middle of it all stood Catherine, the Princess of Wales, George's mother, and the bridge between these opposing forces. Publicly, she remained silent, composed. But privately, sources say she leaned heavily toward Anne's viewpoint, favouring a traditional British upbringing rooted in royal values. Yet with Charles siding with Camilla at the time, any opposition from Catherine would have created an even more dangerous fracture within the family. So she remained in the shadows, torn between her son's future and her loyalty to the crown. Charles, exhausted by the conflict and wary of open revolt, attempted to mediate. But his efforts only exposed his growing dependence on Camilla's counsel. When push came to shove, he backed her decision not because he believed in it, but because he no longer had the will to resist her. This moment was pivotal. It revealed more than just a policy dispute, it uncovered a deeper truth. Camilla wasn't just asserting herself in courtly matters. She was rewriting the very script of royal legacy, one decision at a time. And for Anne, that crossed a line. What began as a disagreement over George's schooling became the seed of a wider rebellion. It was the moment many within the firm realised that Camilla's influence extended beyond the Queen's traditional role. She was steering decisions that shaped the monarchy's future, and doing so in a way that alienated those who had been born into it. For Anne, this wasn't simply a policy error, it was an assault on everything she had defended her entire life. But education was only the surface. What truly ignited Anne was something far more personal, something from the past Camilla couldn't bury forever, a sealed envelope, faded ink, and a truth that refused to stay buried. Months after Queen Elizabeth's passing, an unearthed letter sparked suspicion, fury, and irreversible consequences, especially for Camilla. Whispers of Queen Elizabeth's final wishes had always lingered in royal circles. But when those whispers solidified into a tangible letter written in the Queen's own hand and addressed to her only daughter, everything shifted. The letter, quietly passed from the Queen's longtime confidant to Princess Anne shortly after the funeral, carried with it not instructions, but warnings. Its contents were never officially released, but insiders claimed it read more like a plea than a farewell. The most telling line, now etched into the minds of those who read it: "The crown must never fall into unfamiliar hands." For Anne, it was more than a poetic turn of phrase, it was a clear caution, a mother's final attempt to anchor the monarchy to its values amid a brewing storm of modern ambition. Further lines in the letter reportedly urged Anne to uphold the integrity of the royal household and to remain vigilant against the dilution of duty through influence. Though no names were mentioned, the implications were impossible to ignore. In the weeks that followed, Anne became more withdrawn from public engagements, but noticeably more involved behind the scenes. Her focus shifted to oversight, accountability, and tradition. And it was within this newfound clarity, this solemn responsibility handed down by her mother, that Anne began her quiet resistance. The true rupture came when Camilla discovered Anne had been holding the letter all along. According to multiple palace sources, she confronted Anne during a closed-door family meeting, demanding to see the contents, questioning its authenticity, and accusing Anne of manipulating grief for political gain. But Anne didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice or offer justifications. She simply replied, "It wasn't written to you." That one sentence sent shockwaves through the room. It wasn't defiance, it was a declaration of ownership over legacy. Camilla's fury was palpable. In her eyes, Anne was weaponizing the Queen's memory to delegitimize her reign. But in the eyes of others, Anne was honoring her mother's dying wish. And the timing couldn't have been more damning. The letter had allegedly resurfaced just days before Anne's explosive public declaration, framing her words not as rebellion, but as a fulfillment of duty. That proximity raised questions no one in the palace dared answer. Was the speech orchestrated as a counterstrike against Camilla's influence? Or was it always meant to be the moment Anne stepped into the role of protector? Whatever the truth, the damage was done. The monarchy was no longer anchored by shared memory or unified tradition. It was being pulled in opposite directions between loyalty to lineage and submission to power. Camilla, who had spent years fighting for acceptance, now stood accused by implication, by timing, and by silence of being the very force Queen Elizabeth feared. And Anne, who had spent her life in the shadows of succession, now stood at the center of a storm she neither started nor avoided. As the past collided with the present, the realignment of loyalty within the royal house began to take a new, visible form. When the heir to the throne and his wife stop following the Queen's lead, the monarchy quakes. Behind royal doors, William and Catherine made a quiet but seismic decision to side with Anne, shaking Camilla's position to its core. At first, it was subtle, measured, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but within the palace, the shift was unmistakable. William, long seen as the future monarch shaped by both tradition and modernity, began to distance himself from Camilla's inner circle. A proposal made by Camilla to appoint her trusted aides to newly formed administrative roles within the palace was unexpectedly rejected. Not by Charles, but by William. And this time, he didn't consult. He didn't negotiate. He simply said no. That one decision marked a point of no return. The heir to the throne had drawn a line in the sand, and Camilla was standing on the other side. Catherine's own moves were equally telling. In recent months, she had begun appearing more frequently at events either organized by or linked to Princess Anne. Garden parties, regimental ceremonies, and royal charities where Anne held patronage, Catherine was there, present, engaged, and visibly aligned. While no official statement was made, the message was crystal clear. Loyalty was being recalibrated. And as Catherine's public presence with Anne grew stronger, her appearances alongside Camilla quietly diminished. Then came the schooling reversal. After a long tug-of-war over Prince George's educational path, the decision was made quietly, without announcement, to enroll him in a traditional British institution rather than the foreign elite academy Camilla had championed. The reversal was not just a practical win for Anne, it was symbolic. It was the first time since Charles had ascended that Camilla's preferences were not only ignored, but decisively overturned. The future king and queen were no longer in step with the current queen consort. They were walking their own path. Inside the palace, the atmosphere grew colder. Charles, increasingly weary, remained publicly neutral. But whispers from royal insiders painted a different picture of a monarch exhausted by the strain, pulled between a wife he had defended for decades and a son preparing to lead with a firmer hand. The king's indecision left a vacuum, one that William was no longer afraid to fill. Camilla, once at the center of every operational discussion, found herself sidelined. Her approval was no longer sought for ceremonial planning. Her influence over household staffing began to shrink. Authority was being redistributed quietly, deliberately, and with no warning. The power shift was strategic, not theatrical. There were no public takedowns, no harsh words. But within the machinery of monarchy, where optics are everything, Camilla's fading visibility told the story. She was no longer a unifying presence. She was a dividing line, one that even Charles couldn't shield her from anymore. The unspoken allegiance between William, Catherine, and Anne was solidifying, and while the Queen still held her title, she was now fighting to keep hold of her relevance. But Camilla's fight for relevance wasn't over, not yet. Behind closed doors, she launched a final campaign to reclaim control. Alone doesn't mean defeated, at least not for a queen used to survival. In a last-ditch attempt to secure her position, Camilla summoned loyal courtiers, senior aides, and a handful of aristocratic allies. What she proposed would upend centuries of tradition. It was a private evening at Clarence House, and notably, Charles was nowhere to be seen. Those summoned knew why they were there. Camilla wasn't asking for support. She was orchestrating a countermove. With her authority waning and her influence steadily stripped from palace proceedings, she was no longer interested in maintaining tradition. She intended to reshape it. Her proposal was audacious: a newly formed Queen's Advisory Council, independent of the royal household's conventional chains of command. A modern power structure, filled not with long-serving royal aides, but with those personally loyal to her. It would serve as her eyes, ears, and voice parallel to the existing monarchy, but answerable only to her. The council's first unofficial mandate was surgical: remove Anne's closest allies from boards, events, and public-facing roles. Charities, long associated with the late Queen, were to be reorganized under Camilla's expanding influence. Patronages that had rested in the hands of Edward, Sophie, and even Catherine were quietly being reconsidered, at least on paper. The speed and precision with which these shifts were planned showed just how prepared Camilla had been, but she was playing a dangerous game. As part of her strategy, Camilla turned to the media, a realm where she had once shaped her public rehabilitation with surprising success. Friendly journalists were contacted, leaks were planted. A particularly pointed tabloid article surfaced, subtly undermining Anne's authority, questioning her mental fitness, and framing her recent actions as emotionally driven rebellion. But this time, the press didn't follow the expected script. The piece was met with swift backlash. Social media erupted with accusations of character assassination. Hashtags defending Anne trended for days. Public sentiment had shifted. What once might have been dismissed as palace intrigue was now viewed as a blatant attempt to silence a truth-teller. Camilla's plan, meant to restore her grip on power, only exposed how desperate she had become. The Queen's image, once carefully curated, was now unraveling. Allies began to hesitate. Longtime staff grew visibly cautious. And Charles? Still silent. His absence at Clarence House was no longer a coincidence. It was a statement. Camilla had acted unilaterally, and the royal family noticed. As the Queen's campaign backfired, the royal family responded not with words, but with distance, leaving Camilla exposed for all to see. The king, who once defied tradition for love, now sat still as that same love unraveled before him. Charles, torn between loyalty and legacy, made his most painful decision, yet one that would leave Camilla emotionally abandoned at Windsor. For years, Charles had stood unwaveringly by Camilla's side. Through scandal, criticism, and constitutional skepticism, he had fought to validate her place in the monarchy. But now, as the royal family quietly repositioned around Princess Anne's firm and unyielding stance, Charles found himself cornered by history. The country was watching, the firm was shifting, and the Queen Consort, once rising, was now radioactive. In a move that stunned palace insiders, Charles withdrew from a scheduled public appearance alongside Camilla. The cancellation came without reason, without announcement, but what followed spoke volumes. That same afternoon, he appeared, not in seclusion, but publicly with Anne and young Prince George at a high-profile charitable engagement. A clear signal. The monarch wasn't retreating, he was choosing. The images went viral instantly. Anne, standing firm, George smiling beside her, and Charles appearing composed but weighted, as though carrying a choice he never wanted to make. The message was unmistakable. The line had been drawn, and the king was no longer standing beside his queen. Behind palace walls, the ramifications were even more striking. Senior officials, those long tasked with coordinating Camilla's calendar and public presence, began quietly pulling back. Her briefings grew shorter, her meetings thinner. Staff who once praised her discretion now shifted loyalties, if only in silence. Journalists too sought answers. When pressed during an event, Charles offered only 2 words regarding Anne's now iconic declaration: no comment. It was a phrase that echoed louder than any denial. It signaled that the king would no longer defend, no longer explain, and most importantly, no longer shield. Within a week, Camilla's official schedule saw drastic changes, appearances postponed, tours under review. Behind the scenes, murmurs framed it as a health concern. But to those watching closely, it was clear. This was a slow, controlled removal from the front line of monarchy. Inside Windsor, the atmosphere changed. The Queen's drawing room, once the unofficial centre of influence, now sat quiet. Aides were reassigned. Phone lines that once rang with media coordination went silent. No photographs, no interviews, no signs of recovery. Camilla, known for her resilience, had not disappeared, but she had been exiled in plain sight. The very institution she fought so hard to be embraced by was now pushing her back into the shadows she once emerged from. But it was the next public appearance, or lack thereof, that confirmed what everyone feared. Camilla was truly, officially, alone. One photo told the story. Camilla, seated alone in a Windsor drawing room meant for queens and guests, her eyes fixed somewhere far away. No statements, no supporters, just silence, echoing louder than any declaration ever could. It was Easter, one of the monarchy's most symbolically unifying occasions. A time when the entire royal family traditionally emerges together, presenting a front of strength, unity, and faith. But this year, as cameras clicked and reporters waited outside the chapel gates, only one royal arrived without accompaniment. Camilla. No Charles, no Anne, no William or Catherine. The Queen, dressed in solitude, walked the gravel path to the chapel alone. The palace aides tried to frame it as a quiet reflection, but it didn't take long for the public to see the truth. This was not solemnity. It was exile in real time. Inside, sources revealed that palace staff had been given direct orders. Limit photographs. Avoid exposure. Offer no comment to reporters. It was a strategy born not of privacy, but damage control. What had once been a coordinated media machine supporting the Queen Consort's image had now ground to a near halt. Her closest advisors, those who once championed her access to the press, her initiatives, her presence, were now absent. And beyond the walls of Windsor, the world had moved on. Anne's name still dominated headlines. Commentators praised her speech as the moment the monarchy regained its spine. And with each passing day, Camilla's silence only confirmed what many had suspected. The shift had already occurred. Those who once stood by her began fading from view. Former allies, aristocrats, court insiders, social fixtures distanced themselves quietly, discreetly. Camilla's phone calls went unanswered. Her invitations declined. These weren't dramatic severances. They were the slow unraveling of loyalty. In a court where relevance is currency, Camilla's stock had plummeted. And though no one said it aloud, commentators began to use the term unofficial dethroning, a term that, while lacking in legal weight, carried immense symbolic power. She still held her title, but her influence, her place, that was already being rewritten without her. Then came the final confirmation. A major state event commemorating international unity, an occasion that, by tradition, demanded the Queen's presence. Camilla was not on the guest list, not even mentioned in planning. Her absence wasn't addressed. It didn't need to be. Her non-appearance was a statement in itself. Whatever remnants of her authority had remained were now dust. She had become a figure of the past, lingering in a palace that had already begun writing its next chapter. But even in isolation, Camilla may not be finished. And the next move in this royal game could surprise everyone. Just when the firm believes the storm has passed, another wave brews beneath. Sources hint Camilla may be preparing a memoir, a bombshell, of untold truths, power struggles, and betrayals. If it's published, the monarchy may never be the same again. The whispers began as little more than tabloid speculation. But soon, the murmurs grew louder. Camilla, now isolated and stripped of her influence, had quietly begun holding closed-door meetings, not with palace advisors or charity boards, but with literary agents. Trusted sources revealed that a high-profile ghostwriter, known for penning explosive political memoirs, had been spotted entering a discreet side entrance of one of Camilla's private residences. No statement was issued, no confirmation came. But in a world where silence speaks loudest, the message was chilling. Camilla wasn't done. She was gathering her truths. And this time, she wouldn't be filtered through royal protocol. The rumoured manuscript is said to include not only her version of recent events, but decades of withheld details, private letters, intimate conversations, and text messages exchanged during some of the monarchy's most controversial chapters. From Diana's shadow to the late Queen's cautious approval, from secret power struggles with Anne to whispered disagreements with Catherine, this memoir, if real, could dismantle carefully curated narratives piece by piece. And within palace walls, the anxiety is tangible. Legal teams have reportedly been placed on standby. Confidentiality clauses revisited. Yet despite internal resistance, the Queen Consort, once bound by duty, is now no longer constrained by it. In exile, she has nothing to protect but her name. For King Charles, the dilemma is excruciating. Will he allow such a narrative to be told, especially if it paints him as complicit or conflicted? Or will he intervene, further damaging what remains of their partnership? Some insiders believe Charles may already be aware of the manuscript's progress, but has chosen so far to remain hands-off, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of fatigue. But others suggest something darker, that Camilla may use the threat of exposure not to destroy the monarchy, but to secure her legacy in the only way left. The public, too, is divided. Some express sympathy, seeing Camilla as a woman wronged and cast aside after years of service. Others see manipulation a final attempt to rewrite history through a lens of victimhood. Either way, interest is high. Bookstores, publishers, and streaming platforms are already circling, waiting for the first official announcement. Because if Camilla speaks, the world will listen, and the palace will tremble. As the halls of Windsor fall silent, one truth remains. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.